Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. Though stories of violent home invaders intent on murdering whole families is a staple of the horror genre, the sad reality is that when mass killings like this happen, the perpetrator is almost always a member of the family. However, in rare cases, these nightmarish scenarios have proven to be all too real, with families ending up the victims of revenge killers, opportunistic psychopaths, or someone else determined to do them harm. Adding further terror to these crimes is the fact that they are usually more difficult to solve, with many cases of murdered families simply going cold. Today, we wanted to take a look at a few examples of such cases, focusing on unsolved mass murders where several family members were victimized. Though there are many more examples than we have listed here, these are just a few that stood out to us. If you know of another case that you think we should consider for a future video, let us know in the comments section below. Before we get to our list, don't forget to subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest videos. With that out of the way, here are 5 unsolved cases of murdered families. In 1970, Wesley Diggs and his wife Jean moved their family from Harlem to the quiet suburb of Teaneck, New Jersey. The family was well liked by their neighbors, and for the next 5 years would become a staple of their community. Wesley was a successful businessman who owned 2 bars back in the family's old neighborhood, and his teenage daughter Audrey was a star athlete. It wasn't uncommon to see the entire family at her high school volleyball games. However, the storybook lives of the Diggs family would come to a tragic end in December of 1975. On the afternoon of December 6th, Wesley returned home from work in New York. He had been absent the previous night, which was not unusual given his demanding schedule that often saw him working 18-hour days. Moments after entering, neighbors heard Wesley run from the house screaming, saying that his daughter had been hurt. Sadly, all 4 of the Diggs children would be found dead inside, along with their mother Jean. All 5 family members had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber automatic pistol. Despite the gruesome scene, neighbors hadn't heard or seen any suspicious activity at the house the night before. There was no sign of forced entry into the property, no sign of a struggle, and nothing to suggest that robbery was a motive. Whoever had killed the Diggs family had done so in a very calculated way, managing to kill 3 of their victims while they slept in their beds. Though Wesley was interviewed by police, he was never officially named a suspect in his family's murder, despite some feeling that he was less than forthcoming about what he knew. He passed a lie detector test and evidently had a solid alibi. With little evidence to go on and no murder weapon ever recovered, the investigation soon hit a dead end. In the years since the shocking crime, only a handful of theories have emerged in the case. One of these theories suggests that as one of the first black families in Teaneck, the Diggses were the victims of a hate crime. However, this theory seems to be undercut by the family's relative popularity in the community, and the fact that they had lived there for over half a decade by the time of the murders. Another theory is that the crime was meant to send a message to Wesley, speculating that he may have gotten involved in some illicit business dealings. To substantiate this theory, many point to the seemingly professional nature of the killings. However, without further leads in the case, neither of these narratives could be confirmed. Wesley Diggs died in 1985, without ever finding out who was behind the murders of his wife and children. The case remains unsolved.
On the evening of October 22nd, 1966, Jeanette Sims headed to her family home in Tallahassee, Florida. She had been babysitting for a local family while they attended the Florida State football game that night, returning shortly after. When she walked in the door, she noticed no one was there to greet her. This was odd since she knew both her parents and younger sister were supposed to be there. When she began searching the house, she made a shocking discovery. In the master bedroom, Jeanette found her father Robert and sister Joy Lynn dead. Her mother Helen was in critical condition. All 3 had been bound, blindfolded, and shot in the head at least once. 12-year-old Joy Lynn had also been stabbed several times in the abdomen. Though Helen was reportedly conscious when Jeanette found her, she slipped into a coma before help could arrive, dying from her injuries several days later in the hospital. The crime scene offered very little in the way of evidence, as nothing in the house appeared to be out of place and there was no sign of forced entry. Robbery was quickly ruled out as a motive. In fact, much of what made the crime so chilling was the complete lack of any discernible explanation. The Sims family were respectable members of their community and had no known enemies. Robert was particularly highly regarded by his friends and neighbors, working as the head of data processing for the Florida Department of Education and supposedly possessing a rare expertise in the emerging field of computer science. The brutal murders rocked the city of Tallahassee, causing many to fear for their safety. Halloween festivities were canceled that year, and there were reports of many women registering for self-defense classes. Though there were never any arrests made in the case, several people of interest have emerged over the years. The first was Helen's former boss, a pastor at a local Baptist church who some speculate she may have been having an affair with. Helen had quit her job as a secretary at the church just a short time before her murder. 2 teens were also considered to be possible suspects in the case. A witness who came forward years later alleged that the teens had knowledge of the case not made public, and there were also reports that the pair displayed an unusual curiosity about the investigation. Despite these leads, law enforcement ultimately came up short, leaving the case unsolved to this day.
In the summer of 1965, the Bowles family of Orange County, California, purchased a small cabin in Crestline, a peaceful town located in the San Bernardino Mountains. The cabin was supposed to be a weekend retreat from the fast pace of city life, a secluded spot for James and Darlene Bowles to spend time with their 2 sons. The weekend of August 13th was planned to be one of these idyllic trips, with the family packing up their car and driving up to their new part-time home along the winding mountain roads. But when the Bowleses failed to return to Orange County the following Monday, their extended family began to grow concerned. At the request of Darlene's mother, her brother Floyd made the trip to Crestline to check on the family. When he arrived, Floyd noticed that the family car was missing, and he went to look through one of the cabin's windows. Inside, he could see the Bowles' dog on the couch, covered in blood and lying motionless. Alarmed, Floyd tried the front door and found it unlocked. When he entered the master bedroom, his worst fears were confirmed when he discovered all 4 members of the Bowles family dead. A more thorough investigation of the cabin by police revealed the extent of the carnage. Blood smears were found in the living and dining areas, leading back to the bedroom where the bodies were discovered. Police also recovered 35 .22 caliber shell casings in the cabin, 5 in the living room, and 30 in the bedroom. It seemed that the attack had started elsewhere in the cabin before each member of the family was viciously gunned down, sustaining multiple gunshot wounds. Though the cabin was in a secluded area, police interviewed neighbors and full-time residents of the community to see if they had noticed anything strange. They said that the family had seemed in good spirits and were last seen on the evening of Saturday the 14th. At least one neighbor reported that James Bowles had told them they were expecting a visitor around 8 p.m., though police were never able to discover the identity of this person. Though many people were questioned in connection with the crime, ultimately, the investigation came up short. Though 2 possible suspects did emerge, they were never charged with the murders. The first suspect was Darlene's ex-husband, Harvey Fulton. Employees at Hughes Aircraft, where both Darlene and James worked, reported that Fulton had harassed them. However, there was no solid evidence tying him to the case. The second suspect was a man named George Robert Stewart, who was later arrested for the murder of 2 young boys. Stewart was working at a church camp in the San Bernardino Mountains at the time that the Bowles were murdered, and would have had that period off because the camp was closed on that particular weekend. Some believe that Stewart may have followed James and Darlene's sons home before committing the murders. However, just as with Fulton, there was no solid evidence tying Stewart to the crime, and he denied any involvement. The murder of the Bowles family remains unsolved.
On the morning of December 20th, 1959, a man named Daniel McLeod went to pick up his coworker Cliff Walker. The 2 worked as ranch hands in Osprey, Florida, and were supposed to start the morning by going hog hunting. However, when McLeod arrived at Cliff's home, he was surprised to find the house was dark and quiet. This was odd since Cliff and his wife Christine had 2 young children, 3-year-old Jimmy and 1-year-old Debbie, and it would have been unusual for the pair to sleep in. This worried McLeod enough to enter the family's home, where he made a gruesome discovery. He first found the body of Christine Walker in the doorway leading to the living room, lying in a pool of blood. She had been raped and shot in the head. Next, McLeod found Cliff and Jimmy in a corner of the room. The 2 had also been shot in the head. When police arrived at the scene, they found Debbie in the family bathtub. It appeared she had died from a combination of gunshot wounds and drowning. Investigators theorized that Christine Walker had been the first victim. She had likely been home alone the previous afternoon, and the perpetrators may have killed her before waiting to ambush Cliff and his children when they returned. Though the family's Christmas presents were left chillingly undisturbed around the tree, several personal items were reported missing from the home. These included Cliff's pocket knife, Christine's high school majorette uniform, and bizarrely, the couple's marriage license. This led police to believe that those responsible for the murders likely knew the family and may have been obsessed with Christine. Though many suspects were considered in the case, no arrests were made and the investigation soon went cold. In the years following the murders, just 2 other major theories emerged in the case. The first was based on a confession from a convicted serial killer named Emmett Monroe Spencer, though this was widely discredited by the sheriff's office as Spencer was known to be a pathological liar. The second theory is tied to the murders of the Clutter family in Holcomb, Kansas, which had occurred just a month earlier. The theory was famously chronicled by Truman Capote in his book In Cold Blood, and suggests that the men who killed the Clutter family, Richard Hickok and Perry Smith, also killed the Walkers. Aside from the obvious similarities of both crimes being quadruple murders, Hickok and Smith were said to be in Florida at the time the crime was committed. However, when their bodies were exhumed in 2012 to test mitochondrial DNA against evidence at the scene, the results were inconclusive, likely because the samples were too degraded. Unfortunately, this means that the murders of the Walker family may never be definitively solved.
On November 18, 1987, 29-year-old Keith Dardeen failed to show up for his job at the Rend Lake Water Treatment Plant in Jefferson County, Illinois. As Keith was one of the most reliable workers at the plant, and phone calls to his mobile home had gone unanswered all day, his supervisor grew concerned, calling his parents, who lived close by. Keith's parents also could not think of any reason why their son would not have shown up for work, and asked the police to drive down to their son's home and check on him and his family. Nothing could have prepared them for what they would find when they arrived. Inside the family's mobile home, police found the body of Keith's pregnant wife, Elaine, and the couple's 3-year-old son, Peter. Both had been savagely beaten to death with a baseball bat belonging to Keith. Sadly, the brutality of the crime didn't stop there, as the attack had caused Elaine to go into labor, and those responsible had also killed her newborn. Initially, Keith was considered the prime suspect in the case, as neither he nor his 1981 red Plymouth were anywhere to be found. That changed a day later, when his body was discovered by hunters in a wheat field near his trailer. Keith had been shot 3 times, and his genitals had also been mutilated. His car was later discovered outside a police station 11 miles away, its interior covered in blood. The horrific crime made local residents extremely fearful for their safety. Many began carrying guns everywhere they went, and a family physician reported that several of his patients were unable to sleep because of the rumors surrounding the case. Among these rumors were that a serial killer was stalking the local area, or that the murder of the Dardeens was part of a satanic ritual sacrifice. Though it's hard to know how much of the public response was driven by panic and how much was due to a genuinely rising crime rate, it was reported that the Dardeens had wanted to leave the area over similar concerns. There had been 15 homicides in Jefferson County in the previous 2 years, and according to Keith's mother, he had regretted moving there and had put the family's mobile home up for sale. The investigation, meanwhile, failed to deliver any satisfying explanations for the crime. A lack of stolen cash and valuables quickly ruled out robbery as a motive. Police also found no evidence that either Keith or Elaine had been involved in extramarital affairs, suggesting it was not a crime of passion. There was also no sign of forced entry into the Dardeens' trailer. Without any solid leads, the case soon went cold. Though the serial killer Tommy Lynn Sells confessed to the murders in 1999, he said he could not remember specific details of the crime. And both investigators and the extended family of the Dardeens thought Sells lacked credibility. In particular, his story that he had met Keith at a truck stop and had been invited back to the Dardeens' home where he was sexually propositioned by Keith and his wife seemed wildly out of character to those that knew Keith and Elaine. Though Sells remained a suspect until his execution in 2014, he was never charged with the murders, and the case remains unsolved. That brings us to the end of our list. Do you know of any other cases like these that you think we should consider for a future video? Tell us in the comments section below. As always, if you enjoyed our video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest videos. Thank you for watching.